Welcome to Keep It Electric with Tremayne Person, episode 49. This podcast is being recorded on Friday, August 30th. The Mariners are 68 and 66, sitting in second place in the AL West, 4 games behind the Houston Astros. Still in striking distance, but plenty of work to be done if they want to participate in postseason baseball. We did get to see the entire Mariners starting outfield leave the ballpark this Wednesday. Randy, Robles, and J-Rod all going yard, leaving us bright-eyed for what the future can hold. We witnessed outstanding pitching from the club, which, that doesn't really come as a surprise at this point, but still leaves hope that if the Mariners can figure out this offensive situation, this team can be so very dangerous. Every time the Mariners and the Rays match up, I tend to go down the same rabbit hole. I don't know how many people caught this. And you know what? I don't know if you'll even be interested in hearing this, but we're gonna go here because I can't resist. I don't know how many people caught this, but if you were watching game 1 in this last set between the Mariners and the Rays, there was a minor editing error that sent me down the usual rabbit hole that I've been down before. It's always been fascinating, probably more fascinating to me than most people, but there was a moment when Josh Lowe hit one of his 2-run home runs this series. He's circling the bases in the top of the second, and I hear Aaron Goldschmidt. He says something around the lines of 8th homer of the year for Josh Lowe, something like that. But the graphic said Brandon Lowe, and I'm like, ha! Joke's on you, Aaron. That's Brandon Lowe. You're wrong. And I'm just so confident. And then there was a play to the outfield, and it's, God, I'm confused already. It was Josh Lowe who made the out because Brandon Lowe was on first base. Regardless, I was very wrong. The graphic was also wrong, and Aaron Goldschmidt was indeed correct. But I don't blame anyone for the mistake. And so whenever this happens, I'm always like, oh, yeah, that's right. I get so confused. I'm like, yeah, Josh and Nathaniel Lowe are brothers, and they played together for the Rays, but they never did. Josh played with Brandon Lowe for the Rays, and Nathaniel plays in Texas for the Rangers. And even though their last names are spelled the exact same, they're pronounced very different. It doesn't help that they are all lefty sluggers from Tidewater, Virginia. All 3 of them. They're from literally an hour east of where I'm from, and at times it's just flat out confusing. So, same spelling, 2 different pronunciations. You have to be really intentional when you pronounce those names. Not as easy as one would think, and then look up their pictures on Google. You tell me who's brothers. I mean, it's hard to tell them apart. Anyways, the Mariners are 4-2 since Dan Wilson took over. That is about the smallest of snapshots with no determination. If anything has really changed, he's rolling out a similar lineup that Scott rolled out. I mean, he's basically taken over the team. It's not really his team yet. So I don't think anyone could definitively say that this is the new Mariners, but maybe the change provided a spark. I do think that it is more likely that we met a sputtering Rays team who performs similarly to the Mariners, especially offensively, and similarly pitching wise. Their bullpen's really good. Taylor Rogers definitely bailed the Mariners out in that series against the Giants. He imploded on the mound Friday night, which helped us kind of right the ship and get that series started off right in Dan Wilson's first game as club manager. What I did find interesting, Taylor Rogers is, well, first of all, he's no longer with the San Francisco Giants right now. I believe he was DFA'd shortly after that. He's a submarine pitcher. What I find interesting, and just a theory, he was leaving things out over the zone, yes, but that release and him kind of staying low, I'm very curious if the batter's eye was ever really involved in his pitching style. And I'm very curious if the Mariners could see the ball better. That's just a conspiracy theory. Maybe Taylor Rogers was the right pitcher to be on the mound for the Mariners in that moment. Either way, the Mariners win that series against the Giants, and they go on to win this series against the Rays. So that's a good sign. I still don't think that we've seen enough from Dan Wilson just yet, and we will probably see more or see Dan Wilson's real team next year. So I do want to touch a little more on last episode's discussion involving the firing of Scott Service. I commented saying that most fans are probably rejoicing and really underestimated the amount of Mariners fans out there that really kind of see through these issues. And props to those members of the fan base for also articulating similar frustrations. I do believe that there can be multiple truths to this. We can hate the fact that Scott Service lost his job. We can hate the way that it happened. We can also, at the same time, be super happy that Dan Wilson received this kind of promotion or job or opportunity. Dan Wilson is a super likable guy, and he already has a good relationship with some members of the club, so I don't want anyone to get it confused. I think Dan Wilson would be a great voice in the locker room, and he's got the baseball knowledge and experience to lead this ball club the best way that he knows how. I am more curious, and this is me on the outside looking in. I am more curious of what significant impact he really brings. And that's something that we'll see over time. I think a lot of us are learning that the GM and the president have way more hands. I mean, we know that they have hands on to the lineups or hands on to the players that they acquire. But I think we're going to see, like, what real difference does this make? So I think where I'm leading with this is I think a lot of people are probably more aligned with wanting a bigger change. And I'd be remiss to not include the article written by Danny O'Neill for the News Tribune calling for the removal of Jerry DiPoto. And he's a columnist, so this is more of an opinion-based article, but he did call some of the larger examples over the years pretty brilliantly and very brief, which made it a good read. So obviously starting with the disrespectful way of dismissing his hand-picked manager and I guess former best friend, Scott finding out that he was fired on the internet. That's one. He quickly touched on the 54% bit that Jerry had in a postseason conference. I think for most of us, we all know about the backlash for wanting to win 54% of the games. The article touches on a claim that Jerry DiPoto is thin-skinned and non-confrontational. It hits on his reaction to the in-house performance reviews, the Kendall Graveman trade back in 2021. That was a real problematic move. The treatment of Kyle Seager, who, for those who don't know, he's on my top 10 list of favorite Mariners of all time. And the uncomfortable barrier between him and the clubhouse. It's a really good read and honestly kind of a nice dose of reality that maybe this change at manager really just isn't enough change. I think a lot of people on the outside looking in can probably agree to that. As much as we will continue to root for this franchise, it raises the question that we will be continuously stuck in the same cycle until Jerry is finally out of the door. There may be some truth to that, but I'm still going to hold out hope because what is being a sports fanatic for a sports franchise if you don't have hope? I do believe that the Mariners actually have a lot of good things in place. The reality is that this may not be a franchise on the cusp of winning a World Series or ending their World Series drought. We got a taste of the playoffs, and we're still not out of it yet this year. We have a World Series caliber starting pitching staff just waiting year after year for the hitting to come around, and it's beginning to feel like that talent is being wasted, the talent on our mound. It's beginning to feel like they're being wasted. There's a lot to examine when approaching this offseason, but, First things first, we have to make it down the stretch this year. As stated earlier, we're only 4 games out of first place with a winnable schedule remaining. We have a healthy outfield right now, and we saw what kind of damage they can bring on a good day yesterday, and we'll get into that too. First, we're just going to take a quick break. Transactionally, first, I want to welcome back J.P. Crawford. He's back at shortstop, hit leadoff in his return to the Major League roster on Wednesday from the injured list. Dom Canzone was the odd man out and was optioned to AAA Tacoma. I don't think this comes much as a surprise, especially with Julio back in center field. The outfield was becoming extremely crowded. Also, Leo Rivas, he has a lot of the blame here. Leo Rivas has been swinging a really good bat in recent weeks and hasn't been much of a fielding liability. He's filled in nicely at shortstop. He's filled nicely in at those infield roles. Appears to be staying on the roster for now. And for clarity, Dom Canzone cannot be recalled to the MLB roster when they expand on September 1st. So maybe expect Ryan Bliss to return to the roster at that time. Reasoning behind that has nothing to do with Canzone's ability, but everything to do with the fact that he has to spend 10 full days on Tacoma's roster before being recalled to the majors. So unless someone gets injured, we may not even see him at all for the rest of this year. Personally, I still think Dom has some things to work on at the plate. I like Canzone a lot. He's got a ton of pop when he connects, but he still has this free swinging approach that I think needs to be toned down a little bit. Also, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but it also looks like he's changed his batting stance 2 or 3 times this year as well. So he's clearly trying to figure some things out. Maybe this just isn't the moment for him down the stretch. Either way, we will see. I'm clearly not the one making the decisions here. As for JP, he went 0 for 3 with a walk and a run in his return. He had a bit of a goofy at-bat in the bottom of the third where he grounded into a double play and he kind of just stopped running. I don't know what happened. I think he would have been out anyway, but the way the play just kind of stopped, I believe Cabby was the one tagging second base, and he just froze because he saw that JP had stopped running to first and he was just carrying his bat to the dugout. So he just kind of slowly threw the ball over to first. Even the analysts were trying to figure out what was going on. I haven't heard anything from JP. I don't know if anyone else has heard what reasoning JP had for that. Maybe he just knew that he wasn't going to make it, or he thought there were already 2 outs. Either way, it was strange. No one in the broadcast seemed to know what to make of it. It was just a weird circumstance with it being JP's first game back, and who knows what was going on in his mind during that play. Either way, JP was already having a bit of a down year before his injury, so hopefully he can get back into form down the stretch. I don't know how long they're going to keep him in that leadoff position. He's been the leadoff hitter forever. Robles has been really valuable in that leadoff position. And I think the same thing happened a little bit with Rojas earlier this year. JP got hurt. Rojas was great in the leadoff position, and then when JP came back, he was right back in there. I don't know if you want to experiment with maybe moving JP down the order. I don't know if that's an ego thing, or I don't know what reasoning is behind it, but there have been better leadoff hitters this year, and it seems like we're just kind of waiting for JP to figure it out. Speaking of getting back into form, I don't want to jump the gun, but there's a lot to love about J-Rod's plate approaches, especially on Wednesday, or mainly on Wednesday. He went 2 for 4 with a 2-run shot in the bottom of the 5th, helping the Mariners take Game 3 in the 3-game set against the Rays. J-Rod was mired in a slump before that game. He was 1 for 18 with 6 strikeouts. Apparently him and Edgar Martinez, have been working very closely together over the last week. What's noticeable the most about this is that there's obvious elevation coming from his connection with the ball. He's not being into the ground like he was earlier this year. What's also noticeable is is on the negative side, unfortunately, is how uncomfortable he's been looking at the plate. He's kind of looking way more off balance, probably more off balance than ever, in my opinion. He looked way more centered on Wednesday. You could almost tell something was kind of beginning to click. The way he pulled that ball almost all the way out to Edgar's. I've seen some major overreaction saying the power stroke is back. Let's calm our britches a little bit. That was his first home run in over 30 days, and we really haven't seen much close to resembling a power stroke all season. Also, keep in mind, he went 2 for 4 after going 1 of 18. So I think, this road trip is going to determine if that power stroke is back. I will say, if he stays the course and has a similar approach that he had this Wednesday at the plate, he's well on his way to having a strong showing to close out the season. The Mariners are embarking on a 10-game road trip right now. Starts tonight against the Angels. Then they'll head over to Oakland to face the A's, and then over to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. All 3 of these series they're not just super important, but they're also super winnable, if you ask me. The Mariners, I believe they have lost 6 straight games to the Angels. So they have a lot to prove there. They have typically played well in LA, so I definitely see them taking 2 out of 3 there. Oakland is mad feisty, folks. You don't know which version of Oakland that you're going to get, but if it's the version of Oakland that brings their bats and brings that power, which they have been doing a lot lately, they can sneak up and steal this series from Seattle. So they really need to make sure that they have their bats ready. Seattle does. They need to make sure they have their bats ready for this. I have no fear that the pitchers are going to do their job for the Mariners here. And really, it'd be nice if the goal here was to get to that magic number, which is 4. If the Mariners can score 4 runs, if they can muster up 4 runs in each of these games, this will go very well for them. In this first series, the Mariners have to watch out for Joe Adell and Mickey Moniak. Those are 2 names that really, on paper, it doesn't look like much. But out of all the names for the Angels that's not named or doesn't finish with the name Trout, those are the 2 players that have really lit the Mariners up for the last couple of years. They've had some huge games. Joe Adell, I think he had two game-winning home runs against the Mariners this year. And Mickey Moniak always plays well. Both Joe Adell and Mickey Moniak are hitting over 300 against Kirby today too. So you need to look out for that. I'll be back next week. I'll be back next Tuesday to talk about this series and to talk about the upcoming series against the A's. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Keep It Electric. I'll see you next time. Go Mariners!